In progress.
Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to something else. Something else, Daddy.
This is Nicole Matata, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
Welcome to episode number 232 of Something Else. Feast your ear holes in this week's episode as we take a look at NWA Total Nonstop Action number 65 from October the 1st, 2003. My name is Aria, and joining me as always is the Lamar Jackson to my Malik neighbors. It's Cindy. Cindy, how the hell you doing today?
That hurts more than you'll ever know.
I gave you a less serious injury. I mean, as of this recording, Lamar just has a vague hamstring injury, while Malik has a torn ACL.
I mean, in real life, not the football sense, but for me personally.
Would you rather have the torn ACL? Joining me, as always, is the Malik neighbors to my Lamar Jackson. It's Cindy.
Well, the reason I say in real life because I'm going in for shoulder surgery in about a month and a half.
Yes, you are, and that fucking sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to tell the people about it?
Yeah, I went to the doctor, the orthopedic surgeon, a couple of days ago, and my shoulder is like that of a 70-year-old. I have hardly any rotation. I have a completely torn rotator cuff. And it sucks that I'm going to be out of work for a while.
Now are you out indefinitely?
I have my surgery on the 11th of November, so from then on, I don't know when I'll be back.
11/11/25, a day that comes around once in a century.
Hopefully, this
Much
is the
like
one and
10,
only
10,
major
10.
surgery I get in my life. What? I don't want to say that. The first major surgery that I don't want.
Let's hope this is the one that the one and only non-optional, maybe?
The one and only shoulder surgery.
There you go. At least until, like, somebody hits you with a metal folding chair in the shoulder or something.
I've actually been hit with a metal folding chair. It's not fun.
As have I. I got hit in the back of the head at an indie show. And I didn't get paid for it. So I think at this point I'm an official worker. And I didn't bump for it. So, I mean, I didn't take a bump. I didn't get paid, but I got stiffed in the back of the head with a chair. I think I could say that I'm officially a wrestler.
I got put through a couch. I don't think I've told you this story ever.
No. How did you get put through a couch?
Okay, I was at there was an organization called Insanity Pro Wrestling back in the early 2010s. I went to their February show where their original building was unusable. And also the ring in there as well. So they had to go to a place that had a ring already set up. So they went to an organization called WCWO, and they allowed them to use their ring. And in the front row, there was a couch. myself and my friend Nikki Heyman sat on the couch for the show. After intermission, I forget who one person is, but I know the other one was a piece of shit Drake Younger. Or
He's your
Drake
favorite
Wirtz.
referee, I believe.
Fuck no. He's worse than Rudy Charles. So these two numbnuts started brawling. They get right in front of me. Drake Younger falls back on top of me, and my head hits the back of the couch where it was unprotected.
Mm-hmm.
And I broke a bit of this couch. So I was groggy as hell throughout the rest of the show, and the rest of the time I was with my friend Nikki Heyman.
So I think the WCWO shouldn't allow the Insane Wrestling Federation to ever go and use their building ever again.
Oh, they got a talkie to, but it doesn't worry. Insanity Pro Wrestling's out of business. They've been out of business since 2014.
Well, you never want to see people out of work, but I mean, it's independent wrestling. You can find 4 other indie shows probably in the same 20-mile radius.
Here was the double main event for the show I intended in August. Jon Moxley versus Jimmy Jacobs.
That sounds like a typical catch-as-catch-can wrestling matchup.
And the main event was Bryan Danielson versus piece of shit Drake Younger.
And when was this?
August 2010.
Okay, you said August. I thought you meant like a month ago.
No.
Or I
this
guess
was
2
August
months ago
2010. So this is here's the funny thing. This was after SummerSlam 2010 when Bryan Danielson came back. Was brought back to WWE. But he had booked all of these independent dates, and Vince told him to honor those dates. And he did.
Yeah, Vince seemed to not be able to make up his mind whether or not he'd allow people to finish up their dates or not. Like, remember when Alberto was the AAA champion and he brought him back in to beat Cena that time and never let Alberto go back to lose his championship cummerbund?
I mean, this almost happened with Stephanie Vaquer.
Well, who knows? The thing is, she hadn't even signed yet when all that happened, last year. Anywho, we're on to TNA. It's TNA number 65, and I believe, and I have to go back and double check my list. As we all know, my amazing one-of-a-kind book that you should all read was just released today, and I was putting all my files together, all my video files of all the pay-per-views, and counting them off. Cindy, this is the 400th pay-per-view.
Wow.
Yes. Now, I did think it was funny because I was going through these. Actually, no, it wouldn't have been 400. I think this is 350. I unplugged the my whatchamacallit to put in my headset. I unplugged my whatchamacallit. Oh my God, I'm staring at it. I can't think of it. Whatever. I think this is 350 actually, because WrestleMania 19, which is Austin's last match, is pay-per-view 316.
That is spooky.
Yes, it is.
And also for funsies, I know you told me this. Pay-per-view number 411 is the last TNA weekly pay-per-view.
Yeah, so which is why this shows number 350, not number 400, because if it was 400, then we'd be almost done this. But yeah, number 411 is the last TNA weekly pay-per-view, and it makes sense because, we need help to figure out why the hell we're doing this. So,
force and ignorance.
Well, we've been talking about it, but the big news this week is that TNA is officially making plans for Jeff Jarrett versus Hulk Hogan as the main event of a Sunday night, November 30th pay-per-view called Bound for Glory. This build is to include Jarrett beating AJ Styles for the NWA title and going heel. And one of the ideas being tossed around, and we'll find out whether or not this happens, but one of the ideas being tossed around is that Vince Russo would turn heel on AJ Styles, costing him the title and helping Jarrett win the belt, and he would now go with Jarrett. Meaning that if this does go through, this would be the third straight world title change that happened because of Vince Russo. Now,
Which
there,
I don't like.
yeah, yes, there is a lot of talk about whether or not Hogan would work with Russo, considering the lawsuit and everything that he had against. That he actually, at this point, he still has against WCW, and
Yeah, it
B,
gets settled in 2005.
yeah, and B, whether or not Hogan would set foot in the Nashville Fairgrounds, and most people would say no. And the plan at this point is for Bound for Glory to occur outside of the Nashville Fairgrounds. But of course, the worry is they can't draw in Nashville. Will they be able to draw anywhere else? Plus, if they take the show out of Nashville, are they slapping the hardcore fans that come to every show in the face? Now, of course, as we talked about, they do 1,000 people at these shows, but about 70% of them get in for free. So really, you're slapping in the face the people who aren't paying to watch your damn show anyway. But and then the other news this week in the continuing story, the continuing saga of who books this show, Vince Russo wrote the first draft of this week's show that Dutch Mantel then took and edited all to hell to then present to Jarrett to give us this week's show. So, in case you're wondering what the hell happened to Dutch, this is what the hell happened to Dutch. So, on to the show. Now, the show starts with a video where TNA tried valiantly to make last week's hanging angle not look like a joke. They failed.
Miserably.
They failed miserably, yes. Then we were showed a video of 30 minutes before the show began. They said it was 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and this show starts at 7. AJ Styles and Vince Russo were shown arriving at the arena, and Russo said that there will not be a match tonight because he's going to have a conversation with Jeff Jarrett. And if you remember, the main event this week is Jeff Jarrett and Dusty Rhodes versus AJ Styles and Vince Russo. And so now, 166 hours after booking the match, Vince Russo is telling his partner their great plan to not have the match. What the hell took Russo so long?
I have no idea. Maybe it was working on his hair.
Now, I asked you this earlier, and it cleared up, so I just kind of, told you never mind. Were you able to hear Tenay and West at first?
No.
Okay. So Tenay and West's audio was not working. And the funny thing is, it does end up working again about 8 minutes into the show, but they never mention it, which makes you wonder whether or not they actually knew, it was happening. Now, since their audio wasn't working, they just went straight into the opening match, which is America's Most Wanted versus Kid Kash and Abyss. It's nice to see Cash now wrestling somebody who hasn't spent at least 3 years off national television this week.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked before about the TNA crowd, and sometimes they can just be sitting on their hands throughout a lot of the show. Thankfully, they somehow knew that there was no announcer audio, because I thought they really picked up here with the crowd noise here. And actually, and you might already know this as a football fan yourself, there's actually a famous NFL game back in 1980 between the Dolphins and the Jets that NBC broadcast without announcers. And they experimented solely with crowd noise, extra graphics, the stadium PA announcer, and an occasional sideline report from Bryant Gumbel. Now, the game and the whole idea of it had a lot of good feedback, and you can't really find a lot of it online. I saw a YouTube video of just the scores of the game, so you can go back and see that. However, despite the good feedback, it never got done again. And it makes sense though, because if you're spending big money on your announce crew, why would you give them the week off or make it look to the network like you're wasting money if you can get away without having them on the show at all? And like I said, about 8 minutes into the show, the audio was fixed. Any thoughts? Did you ever know that story about the NFL game?
I did not know that story. I'm kind of shocked that JG9 never did a video on that. Otherwise, I would have known, and he would have taken. Oh, he did?
No, he did. That's how I found out about it.
I mean, how long was that video? Because he usually takes about 20 to 30 minutes to say something that could easily take 10.
I mean, it's probably 20 to 30 minutes, but I mean, I actually stopped following that page probably a year ago. So Kash slapped Abyss a couple of times to start the match. And okay, let's pretend this is real, bro. Because, Russo once said in an interview that everything he does, bro, is things that could really happen. So if this were real, bro, why would you slap your own partner? Because even if it does inspire your partner, the fact that you're hauling off and slapping him is also doing damage to your partner. It is
maybe he gets off on the pain.
If this was a video game, his health meter would ding a little bit. For some reason, Kash decided stalking Jeremy Borash. Why does everybody go after Borash? It's like Borash is never going to have a match until he wrestles Josh Matthews that one time. But, they certainly didn't know that was going to happen in 2003. But we had Gilberti going after Borash. At one point, Ed Ferraro was going after Borash, although that was, because he was trying to break up. Was it Jasmine St. Clair stripping? But either way, he was doing that. And now we have Kid Kash. Again, Borash is not going to be wrestling on the show. Rudy Charles.
There's another reason why he went after Borash.
I'm sure Jeremy Borash said something mean about him on the internet, and since that never got mentioned here on the show, it doesn't count.
It was the Duck Cup. It's how Ed Ferrara got 2.5 points ahead by smacking Borash.
So you're telling me Kid Kash was under the assumption this was a Duck Cup match?
Knowing how much he's an asshole right now, probably.
Well, anyway, Reed Charles broke that up, and we returned to the professional wrestling part of this show. So Abyss and Chris Harris had a fight that the crowd really got into. They really got into the fiery exchange of punches they had here. Harris and Storm took turns with arm wringers to Abyss until Kash came in and slapped Abyss, which inspired Abyss, to press slam Harris and get the heat. Kash gnawed away at Harris's forehead, bloodying him. They messed up a spot where Kash was to go for a double springboard hurricanrana that Harris would block and slingshot Kash into the opposite corner. Of all the parts of that move, the only part of it that didn't get messed up was the double springboard. Abyss sat on the top rope, and Kash climbed him, stood on Abyss's shoulders, and did a moonsault on Harris, which was then followed by James Storm giving Abyss a hurricanrana off the middle ropes. All those words, as unlikely as they sound, really happened. The finish saw Kash throw a chair at Storm's face, and Abyss pin him with a black hole slam. So then after the match, Terry Taylor, who is a stooge, came out and took offense to the rules being broken in the finish, stooging to the referee what would happen. Taylor then tried to beat up Kid Kash and Abyss, but thankfully the two young heels destroyed the retired almost 50-year-old wrestler. And then, what the hell was even the point of this? Because despite Terry Taylor trying to stooge it off to the referee, we were informed, it was, verified, that the winners were Kid Kash and Abyss. So they didn't even reverse the decision here. I gave this match a 6.5 out of 10 because I thought it was the best match on the show, even with Terry Taylor being a stooge.
Yeah, Terry Taylor's an absolute stooge and a little bitch, as we all know. I thought it was a good match. I mean, I gave it a 6. I mean, there's 3 great workers in there, and then Abyss, who's probably one of the best big men of the last 20 years, 25 years.
By the way,
Time
if you want
doesn't
if
exist.
you want more if you want more on Terry Taylor being a little bitch, listen to yesterday's Mid-South show because he finally defended the fucking TV title for like the first time in 6 months. And he was a total bitch during the match with Hercules. Now to get to the serious thing, and I mentioned this on social media, and I messaged you about it. So I think most people know the story that when Abyss's contract came up at the end of 2004, beginning of 2005, that there were serious negotiations with Abyss and WWE. Now, and of course, as we know, Abyss never went to WWE until he got signed as an agent in like 2018 when Jarrett went in and brought in all his guys as agents. But why didn't WWE go after Abyss before TNA? Like this was a big swing and a miss. And I forget when JR stopped being head of talent relations and when they took it from him and gave it to Johnny Ace. But to me, you look at it like, man, Abyss, like at a time period where all they wanted were guys who were 6'2" and 250 pounds, and Abyss is there, and like he's probably legit like Bradshaw's height. He's probably legit like 6'4", 6'5", and he weighs 300 something pounds. He doesn't have like the greatest body, but he dresses well for the gimmick. He presents himself as a monster heel. They could have done a lot with Abyss, but from all accounts, they never even scouted him until after he was already in TNA. And I think that's a huge swing and a miss because even if it's JR was primarily looking at amateur wrestlers and football players because they have the dedication to their craft like that. And someone like Abyss fell under the radar, I guess, which is kind of fucked up if you think about it.
Yeah.
And I know I know Abyss did that one TNA show last year where he was dressed like a blueberry, but it's like still like somebody could have saw that and like, man, there's something we could do with this right here, people. And I think this is, one of those great what could have been moments because Puerto Rico is so far under the radar that Abyss could have come in as Abyss and WWE could claim that they came up with it. He could have still kept the gimmick, kept the mask, kept everything. Because if he would have come in 2005, 2006, they probably would have had him take off his mask, cut his hair, trim up, get some abs, all that fun, happy shit that, would have made Abyss a completely different person. Like in 2002, like, yeah, he would have gone to OVW. Maybe that was it. Maybe if they would have offered to him, he would have said no because, he didn't want to go developmental. But Abyss has been very open about negotiations with WWE in the past. and he's never mentioned anything about a pre-2003 offer. So I think WWE really dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah. Turns out he became head of talent relations in June 2004. So
Johnny Ace.
this is, yeah. So Jim Ross was the head of talent relations around this time. I guess maybe there was an edict from Vince McMahon around this time. Sorry, got messages. That he only wanted muscle guys. Like there was a certain height and muscularity that he wanted. I mean, for example, take a look at Brock Lesnar's SmackDown team and all those muscle heads and Big Show.
Nathan Jones, Matt Morgan, Big Show, and A-Train.
Yeah.
Against Angle, Benoit, Cena, Hardcore Holly, and either Bradshaw or Farouk. I'm pretty sure it was Bradshaw.
So yeah, it was weird.
So from here, Tenay and West announced that AJ Styles versus Jeff Jarrett for the NWA title is official for October 22nd. Don Callis came to the announce desk with the red shirt, screaming that there will be a lot of sorry individuals at the end of tonight because there will be payback after everything that happened last week. And I'm sorry, I think I said sorry. I meant to say that Callis said that they'd be sorry. It's, it's
yes, because he's Canadian.
Yes. Yeah. You picked up on my hilarious joke.
No, I no-sold it like you did that steel chair.
I didn't no-sell it. I just didn't bump for it. I grabbed the back of my head and screamed, "What the fuck?" Which is the appropriate response when someone runs by you and accidentally hits you in the back of the head with a chair. So Jarrett and AJ on the 22nd. I mean, I guess, we already know the finish, and I'll get into my rant later on about this, but yeah, I like that they are plugging something specific for several weeks in advance. So backstage, Scott Hudson was with Michael Shane. Shane said there are two differences between him and Shawn Michaels. Only two? Anyway, the two are that Shawn Michaels never won the first Ultimate X match, and he is not the X Division champion. Once again, TNA continues their streak of building up a match that will never happen. Remember when they went on building up a Brian Lawler, Jerry Lawler match? This has just as much likelihood of happening. Plus, and with all due love and respect to Michael Shane, let's say there was some sort of deal between WWE and TNA in 2003, and Shawn Michaels was going to come in for a match. You would not waste Shawn Michaels on having a match with Michael Shane if you're going to bring him in for a match.
Right, I'd bring him in against AJ or Jarrett.
Exactly.
No, it'd have to be AJ.
Well, the guy who helped sign the checks, might have something to say about that.
Yeah, but remember, he and Shawn do not get along.
Well, we're living in a world where Shawn Michaels is coming into TNA in 2003 for a match. There's already issues with this, whole premise.
True.
So from here, we go to the ring for our next match, which is the X Division champion Michael Shane versus Jerry Lynn. Antonio Pena, owner of AAA, was randomly standing in the ring and randomly introduced to the crowd before the match introductions. So this match is a perfect representation of what makes Jerry Lynn so fucking amazing and why he may be the most criminally underrated wrestler in wrestling history. They messed up a spot early. Who knows what they were supposed to do, but time stood still and everybody froze because Shane forgot what he was supposed to be doing. Jerry Lynn is so good and so smooth that he immediately grabbed Shane and dropped him with an atomic drop. If you weren't paying super close attention, you may not even have noticed what happened here. So Tanay and West start talking about the famous AAA When Worlds Collide show, which they didn't say this, but the funny thing is, like, it was almost the 9-year anniversary of that show on this day. And they note how big of a deal it was for Mike Tenay's career. And do you know why Tanay was announcing that show?
Because he was the only one who knew the wrestlers that could really.
Nope. It's because this was a WCW promoted show. They were in charge of the English side of it. AAA did the Mexican side. And neither Shivani nor Heenan wanted to do it. And so that's how you ended up with Chris Cruz and Mike Tenay. Now, it's very possible that Mike Tenay would have ended up, getting a job at some point as an announcer. But it was Shivani not wanting to do a Lucha pay-per-view that got his foot in the door as an announcer.
And then he would do mainly international stuff for a little while until they brought in Conan, Rey Mysterio. They brought in the cruiserweights. And that's how Mike Tenay started to get on screen.
He would be brought in for one match a show, the cruiserweight match, to do commentary. And then at some point, they just added him permanently to Nitro in like 96.
Yeah, because Mongo turned heel and went with the Horsemen.
Mongo turned heel, but like it was also still like Bischoff and Heenan and Shivani and Zbyszko for a little while. Because they did it where like the first hour was Shivani and Zbyszko, and the second hour was Heenan and Bischoff, at least for a little bit. And then Tenay, I think Tenay came in on the anniversary show of Nitro. Like that September 1996 show. So while we waxed poetically about this, Chris Sabin came out with his big-ass trophy from winning the Super X Cup, demanding to know where his title shot was. We've been saying this for a week. He won the damn thing a month ago. He should have automatically gotten a title shot. He said that next week, he is putting his trophy on the line in a match against the X Division champion. Now, outside of the rough spots early, this built well. Shane is still rough around the edges, but Lynn, like we said, is the company's MVP. They ended up outside the ring by Sabin. Lynn accidentally fell into Sabin, and those two tripped. Wow, what the fuck? Those two shoved each other, not confused with tripping each other or anything with lack. The finish saw Lynn climb to the top. Sabin tripped him up, and Shane won with a super kick. Sabin tripped Lynn up, not Shane. So, by the way, notably, Terry Taylor did not come out to protest the finish of this match, although I guess when he protested the finish of the last match, the referee didn't care then either. And then Lynn was frustrated upon losing. So I gave this match a 5.0 out of 10, knowing that you are not a huge fan of Mr. Shane.
It is serendipitous bullshit ruining a match. And we've seen this with Michael Shane for the past couple of weeks, and we're going to continue to see it for the next 2 months. Wait,
I like that there's
3 months.
I like that there's interference in every match in TNA, and the one that you are particularly offended by is Michael Shane.
Right, because these come out of nowhere.
Well, I mean, Sabin deserves a title shot, and it makes zero sense why he's randomly attacking Jerry Lynn. I mean, they could explain that, he thinks Michael Shane to be easier to beat than Lynn, but they're not going to say that, I'm assuming. But yeah, um, who knows?
I gave it the
Um,
same grade as you did, 5 out of 10.
which is hilarious because I have no issues with Michael Shane. And it's funny, like, 'cause you said like a month ago that I knew what happened. Like, I'll be honest, I never watched this era TNA. Like, my only memory is following like the results online, so I've never actually seen any of this, and I've committed almost none of it to memory. Like, I can tell you the big things that happen, but that's about it. So, like, the Michael Shane X Division title reign, I know he eventually makes it to the second Ultimate X match as champion. Outside of that, I have no idea. Oh, and I know he ends up with Shane Douglas and Tracy Brooks. So that's the extent of my knowledge about Michael Shane.
Anyway,
Anyway,
Hudson's in the back with Mad Mikey, and Shark Boy. Mad Mikey, proving to be a gentleman, wipes a booger on Hudson's jacket. Hudson cringes, and then Mad Mikey eats it anyway. Before they could get a word
I
out,
didn't even know he ate it.
yeah, he ate it.
I just saw him
D'Lo,
wiping it on Hudson.
And after he wiped it on Hudson, he grabbed it and ate it. Gross.
Don't you love watching these shows?
No.
How did I get you to do this? I think it was basically I posted on Twitter, "Hey, does anybody want to do this?" And you commented before Trey, which led to Trey doing the Mid South and Smoky Mountain shows. Because, like, what the hell? I didn't expect anybody to volunteer, and I had 2 people volunteering in the first 10 seconds.
Because
So
we didn't think it would be this bad.
I don't know that, but anyway, Mad Mikey.
Doesn't say a damn word after the booger thing because D'Lo interrupts. He wants revenge on Siaki and ECMO. Don Callis comes out and says that won't be happening, otherwise he will be seeing red throughout the night. Of course, he means the red shirts.
Callis told D'Lo to have his match with Christopher Daniels and then leave. And notably, when D'Lo Brown came up saying he didn't want to interrupt these guys' interview, and then proceeded to interrupt their interview. And fortunately for D'Lo, Mad Mikey and Shark Boy weren't watching their Smoky Mountain tapes, because Tracy Smothers interrupting Brian Lee's promo led to Brian Lee turning heel. So, and actually, it's too bad for them they didn't, because when Brian Lee turned heel, he then won the title. So maybe Mad Mikey and Shark Boy would be tag team champions to this day. Crash Holly would still be alive because they turned heel on D'Lo Brown. Anyway,
Probably not.
Probably not. Anyway, Christopher Daniels with the Minions, who are still there, versus D'Lo Brown. These Minions cannot be lasting long, right? Like, I told you how little I know about TNA from this era, but, like, I'd like to think that, like, Christopher Daniels does not have Minions for that long. Because I know they put Triple X back together pretty soon.
Yeah, I think they go away when Dutch is the full booker and Russo's gone for 4 months.
To go to Divinity School. Actually, is he going to Divinity School now, or is it after he leaves for good? And by for good, I mean next year.
I have to remember when the Ring of Glory show was.
That was like 2005.
No, there was one before it.
I thought there was only one show. Yeah. It was the AJ and Abyss in a church.
And then you had Jeff Jarrett as this egotistical champion, art imitating life.
You meant that was his character.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I was confused there for a second. Just thought you were randomly complaining about Jeff Jarrett being an egotistical champion.
Yeah.
By the way, do you know that Hogan's Heroes is airing on Pluto TV for free? We could be watching and reviewing Hogan's Heroes, which is a show I never watched, but I can almost guarantee is better than this show.
I was going to say Night Court.
Original Night Court or Melissa Rauch Night Court?
Original Night Court.
There you go. I think we'd have fun watching the new Night Court, even though that got canceled.
Yeah, but it was still good. I mean, it was one of the highest rated shows for its time period, and yet it got canceled.
Well, oh well. So Daniels and D'Lo work really well together, which is sad because, spoiler alert, this is the only singles match they ever have. And during this match, I'm thinking, wow, this would be a really fun feud. Like, it's not going to set the world on fire, but Daniels has to do something. D'Lo has to do something. They work well together. I'm like, man, this could be a good little feud they have right here. That is not what happens. So the minions distract D'Lo, which let Daniels dive off the top rope. D'Lo comes back and heaved Daniels into the barricade and then tried to dive of his own, but Daniels moved and D'Lo crashed and burned into the guardrail himself. Callis and the red shirts came out to watch as they went into the finish. D'Lo did a slingshot onto the minions outside of the ring, which led to Callis and the red shirts walking up to the ring to yell at him, and Daniels won with the last rites. As I mentioned, this should have been the first of a long feud between these two. Instead, this is the one and only singles match they ever have. 5.5 out of 10.
I would have given it a higher score, but I think it's too short. Like, they had, 5 minutes for this match? If
6 minutes, yeah.
I'd like to see it go a little bit longer. And with less interference from the red shirts, which, oddly enough, them leaving the end of the red shirts coincides with Russo's return. So we're going to be stuck with these guys for months. I gave it a 4 out of 10 just because it was short. Too short.
Honestly, the bigger issue with this is the whole stupid feud they're having with the black shirts. It's like, we made a big deal that the black shirt security guys are the future of the NWA and the future of wrestling, and they're small, scrawny geeks who got blitzed and destroyed by their much bigger counterparts, and they won by accident. And speaking of that, Scott Hudson is backstage with Eric Watts and, as I wrote, one of black shirt security who had his arm in a sling. These two are so interchangeable that they don't even mention who this was, and it makes better that nobody says who this is during this segment. Eric Watts talks about how he thinks TNA should pay for the kid's operation. The kid. Not Sean Waltman, but the member of Black Shirt Security who is the future of the NWA. Callis walked in, and this was a hilarious discussion. And it was meant to be this too, as a wink and a nod to the inside fans. Callis walked in and said, no, they are independent contractors, and thus TNA is not responsible for paying his medical bills. In fact, Callis points out that Eric Watts is in charge of the in-ring action. He's the person that booked this match, so maybe Watts should open up his wallet and pay for the kid's operation and pay for his medical bills. And all I could think was, when Conan sued TNA like 5 years later over his unpaid medical bills, I hope TNA used Don Callis in their defense. Then
that would have been brilliant.
It gets better because, like I mentioned, this segment had Scott Hudson, Eric Watts, and Don Callis all talking. We go back to the announce desk where Mike Tenay is talking. Nobody said this guy's name until Don West. the person with the least amount of pro wrestling experience of any of the 5 people I mentioned pointed out that this was Rick Santel. And Rick Santel's the guy last week who got heaved out of the ring by one of the red shirts. I think it was Ryan Wilson. He got heaved out of the ring and halfway up the ramp during the finish of that match. And he separated his shoulder because of it. By the way, I was just watching the Ring of Honor show because lately, to restore my sanity, when I watch a TNA show, I watch a Ring of Honor show from that period of time just to like I said, restore my sanity. And on this show, we had Rick Santel in a sling. And were you afraid of Rick Santel at all standing there with a sling on?
I thought he was going to get his ass kicked again by the red shirts.
Okay. Were you worried that if you were to see Rick Santel in front of you in a sling, that he would kick your ass?
No.
I was watching Ring of Honor, and I forget which show this was. It was May 2003. It's the one after the UK show. The main event is Samoa Joe and Homicide for the Ring of Honor title. And this was right after Low Ki separated his shoulder. And Low Ki is out there in a sling, essentially being Homicide's manager. And that motherfucker was scary. Like, I didn't care that he had his shoulder in a sling. I was worried he would kick my ass if I said anything mean about Low Ki.
That's because he actually would. He's that crazy.
I mean, not even saying crazy, just... By the way, could you hear me just fine up until just now? I just realized I had the microphone up by my ear instead of by my mouth where it's supposed to be. Cindy, can you hear me? Hello?
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'm still here. I'm just talking to my brother. We're discussing dinner. We're having chicken tikka masala for dinner.
Nice. Y'all picked a great time to do that since it was when I was checking to see if you could hear me. But yeah,
that's why I muted in the first place, because I don't think you wanted to hear about us talking about dinner.
I mean, the first episode, not even the first episode, but one of the first episodes, your grandmother came in and asked if you want something to drink, and I answered for you.
If my mom heard that, she'd kick your ass.
I'm sorry. I thought you said it was your grandmother.
No, it's my mom.
I apologize. Well, your mom's probably not listening to this show, but if she is, I apologize, Mrs. Heidelman, for insinuating that you were Cindy's grandmother instead of her mother.
Could be worse. There's a Twitch streamer that I follow called Brysolf. She once called her Mumsy.
And, she called your mom Mumsy?
I'm sorry, Brysolf, he called my mom Mumsy.
Okay.
And on stream, because both of us were running Dragon Warrior Randomizer, she went and said, whoever it is, I'm going to kick their ass.
And I believe she would probably do that.
Yep. All right. Can we skip this Piper interview? Because I could barely hear a damn thing for this interview.
Okay. So I'll talk about it. So we have part 2 of that Roddy Piper pre-taped interview from 2 weeks ago. Despite being fired from TNA, TNA continues to air this interview. Piper, after the last segment, maybe this should have aired before the last segment, but Piper begins talking about health insurance. TNA turns this from a health insurance discussion into a discussion about how Piper was fired by both WWE and TNA. And like last week, this was jump cut all to hell. And it's like, you can only imagine what the unedited version of this was. Piper, and then much like the opening of the show, the audio was glitchy. The audio here was glitchy too. It culminates in Piper saying he's never quitted anything and he isn't going to start now. He tells us they made one mistake, and that is, it's been 22 years. We have no idea, because he went mute, or the audio went mute, and we immediately went back to But we immediately went back to Jeff Jarrett and AJ Styles getting ready for their match tonight. This was not an angle. This was not like, we came back and Russo's in the truck screaming to turn it off and pull out the tape. No. This was just, bring your daughter to work and have her do your job day in the TNA production truck. You remember last year when TNA had that silent auction where you could bid on one-of-a-kind experiences and then half of them never happened for one reason or another? Maybe one of them was work in the production truck. And today was the day that they finally cashed in on that.
They would have done a much better job than they normally do.
So from here we go to Sonny Siaki and ECMO versus Trinity versus Shark Boy and Mad Mikey. Shark and Mikey did a double 619 to ECMO, and it looked so bad that Tenay and West should have just ignored it, but of course they didn't. Shark went for a sunset flip on ECMO, but ECMO didn't go or even sit down on it, so Shark bit him on the ass. ECMO broke out the running a hip attack that he'd be remembered for during his run as Umaga that later got used by the Usos. A four-way broke out, and ECMO pinned Shark after a top rope splash. After the match, Siaki powerbombs Mikey and puts him on top of Shark for another splash when D'Lo Brown ran out for the save. Trinity tried to give D'Lo a low blow, but he blocked it and gave her a lowdown, which I think was less insulting than spanking her bare ass last week. The red shirts ran down and attacked D'Lo, and at this point I'm thinking it was a shoot fight here because their job was to zip tie D'Lo's hands behind his back, and Jesus Christ, time stood still while they did this.
Further proof that Ryan Wilson sucks.
Well, D'Lo was fighting at something fierce here. And I gotta say, there's something continues to be funny about watching two large white men handcuff a smaller black man and drag him away. Because the one thing about the red shirts, they take the whole drag somebody out of the building thing seriously and literally. They dragged D'Lo out of that building. I'm starting to think TNA would be like making billions of dollars of profits in 2025 if every week Ryan Wilson and Kevin Northcutt were on TV dragging somebody against their will out of the arena. Then, because shit has to keep happening, Chris Vaughn, the other black shirt, got involved and literally got thrown out of the building. And I don't know about you, but when I saw it first in real time, I thought, because they threw him through the doorway out the building, I thought he hit his head off of the door frame. But I went back and rewound, and it's like, no, he barely missed the door frame. But Jesus Christ. This match was slightly more competitive than your usual TNA enhancement match, and contains the oddest of stipulations to ever occur in a wrestling match. The loser of the match who does not get pinned must die in 36 days.
That is depraved.
Yes. I don't know if Mikey's going to be on the show again, because, he always does a lot of segments backstage, but this is his last match in TNA. And then he's going to pass away on November 6th. And famously, he passes away on Stevie Richards' couch. But Sonny Siaki and ECMO are your winners. Rating 2.0 out of 10.
I gave it a 2.5 out of 10. I threw it a couple extra points for one thing. When Shark Boy was going for a move off the top rope, it got countered by ECMO, and ECMO just gorilla pressed him, and Sonny Siaki got so much air and brought him down for a cutter. I thought that was a really cool spot. Yeah, it should have been the finish.
Yeah. But then again, it's like, most tag teams in TNA are bigger than Shark Boy and Mad Mikey, so you need a finish that you can do on everybody. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but it might be doubtful that ECMO could hold up, even the Chris Harrison, James Storms of the world over his head long enough to do that, to do a neck breaker. So from here, we are magically whisked away to a pre-taped sit-down interview where Mike Tenay was with Simon Diamond, Johnny Swinger, David Young, and Glenn Gilberti. Swinger brought up that he's back in 1 week after his emergency appendectomy. More on that in a minute. Gilberti, I had to laugh here because, I hope everyone's sitting down for this because I'm going to break some news for you. Jim Cornette and Vince Russo don't like each other. I know they do a really good job at not letting people know their true feelings about each other, but it's true. They don't like each other. You may not be aware of that, but we tell you how it is here on Something Else. And so Glenn Gilberti, as a good friend of Vince Russo, at least he was at the time, he starts to talk about how he's not a typical 80s wrestling manager and how he doesn't have a tennis racket. And I always think it's funny they rip on Cornette when Cornette helped draw more money in one night when he'd been in the business for less than 2 years than Glenn Gilberti has ever drawn in his life put together. And that was with, the advantage of pay-per-view as well.
Mm-hmm.
Gilberti said David Young is not part of the group, and this was news to poor David, and he was quite upset about this. Glenn called him a pain in the ass and said that if David wants to be in the group, then tonight he has to wrestle the Sandman, and if David Young wins, then he'll consider David Young for the group. I want to know, what the hell did we do wrong to deserve David Young versus the Sandman?
I have no idea. I mean, maybe because this is around the time where Glenn Gilberti stopped doing a lot of wrestling. Like, he would still wrestle, but he would only wrestle on TNA like once a month.
I gotta say, I'm not shedding tears for the end of the Disco Inferno's in-ring career.
I only recognize one Disco Inferno, and that's the robot from Robot Wars.
That's funny because, I think we've mentioned this before. Disco is still fairly active, at least up. Well, honestly, he really stopped being active when the pandemic happened, but he does come every so often. He does come out of retirement to have a match or two. But yeah, it's like the guy is still had a decent number of matches in him. But actually going through here, man, you lied to me because Disco is going to be wrestling a lot. Jesus Christ, what are you talking about? I'm looking like Disco has like 30 more matches we're going to be talking about. It's all your fault for making me think we'd have no more Disco.
I got confused by the robot on Robot Wars.
Disco's last match, is, at least until he leaves and comes back sporadically for a match or two, is a match against Monty Brown in a December 2004 episode of Impact. And the good news is that match lasts 27 seconds. And it's December 2004, so you should be able to guess who won that match.
Monty Brown.
Although it's funny, it was 3 months after a loser gets fired match that he loses.
Yeah, because that's the match that got David Young to snap his impressive losing streak.
Which is hilarious because he doesn't really have. All I knew about David Young is he has this fucking losing streak, and it's like David Young is like the most 50-50 wrestler on this show. I'm waiting for this damn losing streak to actually begin. Maybe this is it. Maybe the match we're about to talk about in a few minutes is the match that begins the famous David Young losing streak. Because, we've been doing this for 65 weeks, and I'm still waiting for the fucking guy to go on a losing streak. Anyway, Scott Hudson is with Jeff Jarrett and Dusty Rhodes, who's wearing tights and a t-shirt. Who told him that wearing tiny trunks is smarter than jeans at this point? Dusty calls Russo baggage and says that he knows he was the greatest, but AJ has a whooping coming since he won't get rid of the excess baggage. And then Jarrett blew off the idea of breaking bread with Russo and how in 3 weeks he'd be the world champion again. I still can't believe Dusty in 2003 is wearing his tiny trunks on TV.
Makes you thankful that we're watching old VHS rips and not the current stuff that they have on TNA Plus where it's in 1080p.
By the way, I don't want to spoil anything, but I can attest that this is not the start of the David Young losing streak, unless we don't count Explosion as part of the losing streak, because he wins a lot of matches on Explosion.
I think the official losing streak starts in November.
Look, I'm in January and he wins a match on pay-per-view. March he wins a match on pay-per-view.
So this is a fraudulent losing streak.
They can't even do David Young losing streak right. Jesus Christ. Like, okay, I can see at some point he starts losing a little bit more often, but I can't wait till we get to that and they try to say how many matches he's lost because he loses like 10 matches in a row. It's like it's over like a 4-month period, but like it's not like, he is sitting here losing every week. Like, yeah, he starts losing to some real dorks, but it's like, he's a 50-50 guy. Like, he wins a match on the March 3rd, 2004 pay-per-view, and then he loses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. He loses 14 matches, and at least 2 of them are dark matches.
And I think they counted that as like 75 losses.
That's going to be the worst streak since Sid's streak. I can't wait to complain about that. Literally, like, okay, mind you, he's winning like tag matches and 6-man matches. So maybe they're saying, oh, he didn't really win because he may not be the person that gets the fall. But that shit counts. He won matches. There is no David Young losing streak. I am mad about this now, and we're not even at the David Young losing streak yet. All right.
Can we quickly go over the squash match between David Young and the Sandman? Because I want to point out a couple of things.
We haven't even reached that yet. You haven't even shared your thoughts on Jeff Jarrett and Dusty Rhodes promo.
I actually like Dusty's promo here. Like, Dusty Rhodes can still cut a good promo when it's focused.
Vince Russo became the first person to ever actually watch this show because he's in the back and got upset because he was watching the interview. Russo screamed again that there'd be no match tonight and he's going to go pay Jeff Jarrett a visit. Now, you may regale your thoughts on David Young versus the Sandman.
So, Sandman might actually be the most over person on the show so far. Because there are actual We Want Sandman chants. Or Let's Go Sandman. Then I noticed something. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not sure if that's better or worse than last week when the most over thing on the show was Trinity's bare ass.
I would have given that bare ass a 9 out of 10.
Anyway, go on.
Did you see Sandman's shirt?
Yes, I did.
It says,
I cannot imagine any human being wearing this in public.
This is an awful shirt. I smacked it raw. I want more. TNA wrestling. gross.
Yes. Again, I'm not even saying I just don't want to wear that shirt like outside of a wrestling show. I would not wear this shirt to a wrestling show. I would rather wear that shirt that said Big Show with an arrow pointing down or the APA's always pounding ass shirt before I wore this shirt.
What about the Sin Cara penis shirt?
I wanted the Sin Cara penis shirt so bad, but sadly they took it off sale.
I'm pretty sure you can still find the AJ Styles cum shirt.
I'm afraid to ask what the AJ Styles cum shirt is.
It says Styles, but it looks like somebody
Jizzed?
Yeah.
Well, tell us more. Oh, Jesus Christ. The hell did I not remember this shirt? That AJ jizzed on the front and then Styles jizzed on the back. That is exactly what you said it was.
Yep. I'm pretty sure there's a list out there of the worst wrestling t-shirts of all time. We just talked about 3 of them.
All right, so tell us more about the Sandman versus David Young. By the way, Gilberti slapped Young a few times before going to the back, which, hey, it worked when Kid Kash did it to Abyss. However, my gut says David Young is no Abyss.
Well, he was motivated. Still lost, though. It was actually kind of entertaining. I mean, it was part wrestling match, part garbage brawl although Sandman didn't have a weapon. But he mainly just threw David Young on a few barricades, did a few hip attacks. And David Young goes for a move off the top rope, but gets hit with the Heineken Rana, which was a finisher of Sandman's for a while. And I've never seen this from the Sandman. He pulls out a freaking Swanton bomb for the 3.
I mean, Jeff Hardy's off of WWE at this point, so someone's got to use that move, I guess.
This might have been one of the best quote unquote wrestling matches we've seen out of the Sandman for the past decade. 2.5 out of 10.
1.0 out of 10. This match went way too long.
Yeah.
Then, to add to the greatness of this, after the match, Glenn Gilberti walloped Sandman with a chair, which I sincerely hope is not the start of a feud. Simon, Swinger, and Glenn got in the ring, and they picked David up, raising his arm. But of course, bro, it's a swerve. Simon hit him with a chair, and we got a 2-on-1 because I imagine Swinger is still not cleared for active wrestling and actually left the ring as 3 Live Crew ran in to run off Glenn and Simon. Because, yeah, it's not advisable when you've just had an emergency appendectomy to be taking bumps a week later.
And he was only
So now,
30 when he did this match.
who?
A Swinger.
Well, fair, he didn't have a match at all.
He doesn't have a match again until next week.
Of course. Of course.
Because as he said in the sit-down interview, he's a tough guy.
We'll see exactly how much he does next week. We'll see, I guess. Vince Russo was dragging Scott Hudson around to Jeff Jarrett's locker room. Jarrett came out, and Russo said that he's the only person that gives a shit about Jarrett. And Jarrett said the future is in about 15 minutes. He's going to wrap his guitar around Russo's head. Sadly, does not happen. Jim Mitchell comes out and cuts a promo saying the gathering is no more and he would like to thank Shane Douglas for that. Mitchell said Douglas throwing Raven off the balcony and hanging him was the end of the feud. Now, I shouldn't bother pointing out that Douglas didn't actually throw Raven off the balcony last week, should I?
No.
Anyway, they are moving on to Phase 2, and Phase 2 is darker and more nefarious than anything we could think of. And that led us to a 6-man tag, Vampiro, Sin, and Slash, with Jim Mitchell and I guess I wrote and Shane Douglas, even though he was doing commentary, versus 3 Live Crew, who walked to the back just to turn around and walk right back out. And I gotta tell you, when the bell rang, that officially meant Vampiro had one more match in TNA than I thought he did. And turns out he has 4 matches, one of which are on Explosion. But I'll be honest, I did not think he ever actually had a match on this fucking show. So what was up with Don West on this show? Like, he suddenly turned heel halfway through the show, and he was burying the 3 Live Crew's theme song. He was like randomly putting over Russo in the main event. Who knows what the hell is going through Don West's brain here halfway through the show. During the match, they randomly plugged an IWA Puerto Rico show that's happening in Florida. They barely plugged their own shows half the time, and now they're plugging another company. Vampiro gave BG a big boot to get the heat. Truth got the hot tag, and a 6-way brawl broke out. The finish saw Jim Mitchell jump up on the apron to distract Truth and surreptitiously threw his cane to Vampiro. Well, Vampiro did not surreptitiously use it. The referee caught him and rang the bell, and despite catching Vampiro cheating, and only Vampiro cheating, the referee declared this a no contest. Is the referee also turning heel? Because that's a blatant disqualification.
I don't know.
This match went too long and had a dumb finish. 1.0 out of 10. Can we go back to watching 3 Live Crew having skits every week again? And we all know how much I love those.
Nah. They'll do better stuff later.
You know, the funny thing, it's like, I remember liking 3 Live Crew, when I started watching TNA finally. What the hell was wrong with me?
They were a more refined 3 Live Crew, and they actually had decent people to work with. I mean, you're not going to get the best out of 3 Live Crew out of a soon-to-be gone Vampiro, a green as goose shit Sin, and fair credit to Slash, but he's not going to be long for. No, he sticks around for a while, but he's probably the only good wrestler in the new church right now.
Which are our parents for Slash here?
Huh?
Well, don't you know Slash isn't real? He's just one of our parents dressing up as him. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the sound of you confusing your co-host. Go on.
Anyway, this match is focused on Shane Douglas. Like, most of it is like Shane Douglas talking about he's going to have a new franchise. He's going to instill his knowledge into somebody.
A franchise.
After the match, Raven comes down and takes out the entire church and Shane Douglas. Raven cuts promo saying he's got nothing left to lose and plans to make Mitchell suffer internally and internally.
And then he told Mitchell repeatedly to dream blood. Dream blood.
We got Don West hype time.
So next week, Kid Kash and Abyss versus America's Most Wanted, with Terry Taylor, who is a little stooge, as the referee. Why? Then we have Chris Sabin's trophy versus Michael Shane's X Division title. And I feel I have to clarify when I say that. I know Russo is involved, and it sounds like I just said that next week there was going to be a match between a trophy and a title belt. But what I mean is Chris Sabin will be wrestling Michael Shane, and the winner will get both the X Division title and the Super X Cup trophy. And then we'll also have the one-of-a-kind barn burner, Red Shirt Security versus Chris Vaughn and D'Lo Brown.
If that doesn't
Now-
make you want to pop down your $9.99, I don't know what will.
Now we've seen the end of the Don Callis segments on this show. Do you feel like all of his enemies have been or feel sorry for what they've done?
Probably not.
So, I mean, Jerry Lynn just left the building. D'Lo Brown got dragged out of the building, and Chris Vaughn got heaved out of the building. And we know that D'Lo Brown and Chris Vaughn are going to come right back into the building next week.
Jerry Lynn said that he was disgusted, and that's why he left.
Yeah, we didn't mention this.
No part of it.
We didn't mention this. Lynn just, during one of the matches, it was announced that Lynn just left. Wearing his gear. Carrying his bags. Apparently, Scott Hudson was trying to get an interview with him, and he must have thought Hudson gets too much TV time already.
And when I say he left, he left.
Yes. Yes.
He does not come back until the America's X Cup.
Oh, don't tell me that. Jerry Lynn's like one of the best parts of these fucking shows. God damn it. Tune in next week where people who are not as good as Jerry Lynn will be wrestling. Main event time. Speaking of people not as good as Jerry Lynn, AJ Styles and Vince Russo with Trinity versus Jeff Jarrett and Dusty Rhodes. The mystery of this match was whether Dusty Rhodes would take his shirt off and wrestle in just his trunks. And thankfully, I assume nobody told him it was on pay-per-view because you couldn't just turn the show off when you see something disgusting like that. So he left his shirt on. Russo was wearing a New Jersey Devils sweater over the pads that hockey players wear and a helmet. And then the match begins, and Don West theorizes that Rusty can't stand toe-to-toe with AJ in this day and age. Personally, I agree, even though I have no idea who Rusty is. So we'll get to this later, but it was very clear that some UFC watching had been done between some of the participants in this match. Because AJ's using his leg kicks, which he never really used before. And then AJ pretty much only got offense on Jarrett when Russo distracted him. Hell, minutes later, Russo distracted Dusty, which was when AJ finally took over on him. And this was essentially a 2-on-1 handicap match. Russo did almost nothing physical, which was for the best. However, in one of those Vince Russo is a total badass moments, when Jarrett got the hot tag, he put Vince Russo in the figure 4, and Russo lasted 30 to 45 seconds in it without submitting before AJ broke it up. Jarrett used the baseball bat on both. Jarrett gave AJ a stroke off the middle rope, and Dusty pinned him with an elbow while spanking his ass, a la what Randy Couture just did to Tito Ortiz. And that fight had just happened the prior Friday, so I doubt it was a coincidence. I'm positive Dusty had seen that fight.
Or at the very least, AJ saw that fight and suggested the spot to Dusty.
No, I think that was more of a Dusty thing. So this match between AJ Styles and Jeff Jarrett, featuring appearances by Dusty Rhodes and Vince Russo, was pretty all right. And for all intents and
Yeah.
purposes, this is, thank God, Vince Russo's last match ever. However, well, last match ever with an asterisk, because according to Cage Match, he did a 10-man elimination tag match in 2015 for the IWA UK promotion, where he would be eliminated by Grado at the finish. And then I gave this match a 5.5 out of 10.
That's what I gave it, 5.5.
All right. So I just want to say this. So we all know what's coming up. AJ and Jarrett's coming up on the 23rd. Even if you don't know what's happening, you know what's happening. And about the 22nd at the 23rd. So AJ has looked like such a wimp this entire title reign. I don't want to say he's gotten nothing out of it, but he's pretty much gotten nothing. Like, Jarrett has beaten him every tag match they have. Jarrett has beaten AJ. Now, I know technically Dusty won this match, but Jarrett won this match. What they should have done to actually get AJ over is, after the three-way, they have Jarrett come out and demand his rematch, and Eric Watts decides to not wait 3 months to realize he has power, and he books AJ and Jarrett sometime in July, and AJ wins. And that's when they do the splinter Jarrett off to fight Legend and fight Daniels. By the way, what the hell ever happened to the Legend? He's disappeared. But, they could have splintered Jarrett away to do that. They splintered AJ away for his D'Lo feud. And you give AJ the credibility of actually beating Jarrett, and instead of it being like this, where AJ's the champion until Jarrett's ready to win the belt back. It's very Triple H at the same time. It's like, even if you won the belt from him, you only held it as long as until he was ready to beat you again, and that was your next match with him. So after the match, AJ takes the mic and says that no one embarrasses him like this 2 weeks in a row. And so next week, he and Dusty Rhodes will have a match. And AJ told Dusty that he could pick the stipulation. Russo screamed at AJ, so AJ bitch slapped Russo, turning major babyface in my opinion. Dusty accepted the match, and then after thinking about it for a little bit, he felt that the one stipulation that they could have is that the match next week between he and AJ Styles is for the NWA World Heavyweight title. And Jeff Jarrett was perfect in an unperfect situation, because Jarrett was laughing at the whole idea of AJ versus Dusty until Dusty said it was going to be for the title, and Jarrett got this what the fuck look on his face. And so Jarrett gets in Dusty's face for an argument, and the referees and security broke up the potential fight as the show went off the air. Now, apparently, the fans live were confused as to why those two were arguing, and I'm pretty sure we all were thinking the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what if Dusty's getting a title shot? Because if Dusty wins, then Jarrett would just wrestle Dusty. And in fact, like, all it would have taken was for Jarrett to just go to Eric Watts and confirm and say, hey, if Dusty wins, I still get my title shot, right? And Eric would be like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, great. Instead, Jarrett looks like a hothead here, because why the hell is he giving a shit? Because he's still going to get his title shot. And yeah, we're going to get AJ versus Dusty Rhodes for the World's Heavyweight title next week. Plus, in theory, this not only starts the Jarrett heel turn, this starts the AJ babyface turn. Because, spoiler alert, AJ is going to turn babyface again here in a minute. And you could see, because we mentioned at the beginning of the show, what the original plan for the 22nd was. You could see that they were setting up for that.
Yep.
All right. So that is the end. That brings us to the end of the show. Now, match quality, we went off a cliff there in the middle. Like, we had, a couple matches where we had 6s, a couple fives, a 5.5, and thanks to that middle of the show where everything went to hell, match quality overall a 3.79. However, I will say this, overall enjoyment 6.0 out of 10. I liked this show, possibly due to going in with super low expectations because the last few shows have sucked major dicks. But I liked the show. The first hour was good. The second hour could have been a lot better, but I liked this show. Now, for future build, I'm a little interested in AJ versus Dusty, kind of in the perverse, way. Like when I said a few months ago that I wish Sandman had won that gauntlet and we got AJ versus Sandman for the world title. In a similar way, I've got a perverse desire for AJ and Dusty. However, I do like they're going hard on pushing Styles versus Jarrett on the 22nd. They have not really done this push for one specific show since the anniversary show. And even then, they didn't even announce anything for the damn show until the going off the air the week before. But, we're pushing hard the 22nd. It should not come as a detriment to the middle two shows because they have a lot of talent on this show. They could have made Chris Sabin versus Michael Shane next week into a much bigger deal. Shane's the X Division champion. Sabin won the Super X Cup. That should be a big deal. They could have put AJ versus Dusty in 2 weeks and done Sabin versus Shane next week as the main event and put them as a top spot. But it's TNA and it's the story of TNA. So as always, one step forward, 2 steps back, the history of TNA. But that does give us an overall rating of a 4.60, higher than average.
Which is all we could hope for.
We have 47 of these things to go.
Yeah.
2025
Victory Road on Friday?
One? No,
the current one, 2025.
I was at the movies.
Ash is gone.
I think she didn't say anything, but I think she's pregnant. Because it was that very vague, I'm going to be leaving for a little while thing that, they do. And it's like, they didn't say why. So my assumption is she's pregnant. And she just didn't
either
want to
that
say
or
anything.
Something really, really bad happened.
But I mean, what could be really, really bad? Because I mean, she was supposed to wrestle Masha, and we know why Masha wasn't there. But she just disappeared. So instead, they did a battle royal, and what's her name from NXT won, and now what's her name from NXT?
Jordan won.
Kalani Jordan will be defending the TNA Knockouts title against Indy Hartwell at Bound for Glory in 2 weeks. Which it's funny because this whole angle started with what's her name winning both the TNA and the NXT titles, and then they got the TNA belt off of her sooner than as soon as possible. And I know Ash and Masha, whatever the hell happened, screwed that up. And so now we're going back to an NXT person holding the title and defending against the TNA person.
And it's supposed to be JC Jane.
Yes.
Something's wrong with JC. Something has to be wrong with JC Jane, or they're going to move her up.
Why do you say that?
Because they're building up towards this No Mercy NXT show, and I think JC Jane might be dropping the belt.
That was yesterday.
The next show, Invasion, I think.
So yeah, JC Jane defeats Lola Vice to retain the NXT Women's title at No Mercy 2025. I think I've said this already, but JC Jane is a very attractive young lady.
Yep. Anyway, I think it's time to wrap this up.
Sure, why not? So we'll be back next week as we dive further into October. and our descent to insanity continues. Until next week, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you again in about 7 days.
I need to watch more Memphis from 1987.